right, so could you guys introduce yourselves and what are your roles in developing RAD?
My name is Lee Petty, and I'm the project lead, which is sort of a creative director role on RAD.
And I'm Kevin Johnson, and I'm the producer on RAD.
Great. So just tell us a bit about what RAD is.
So RAD is primarily a top-down 3D action roguelike game, and our world is set in a post-apocalypse. So it sort of takes place not after just one but two apocalyptic incidences, and you play a teen in a town like in the third age of man, if you will. And your town has survived on the edge of the wasteland in relative tranquility, but the power that they've used to sort of fertilize the crops and filter the air, keep the borders secure, has run out. So they have to send someone out to quest for new power. And that's sort of inciting incident that starts our game. But if they just were to send a teenager out in a town, you just die, the toxins. So what happens is the mysterious town elder performs the ritual of the remaking. And in that, he alters your DNA so that you absorb the toxins, or the RADs, as they call them. And in doing so, your character randomly mutates as you play the game. And that's kind of where we key into our take on the roguelike genre. Is none, of course, like most of the roguelikes, the world itself is procedurally generated, and you kind of have permadeath with your run. But what your character can actually do is random each time as well, based on how you mutate.
So it is a roguelike, of course, as you said, and roguelikes have tons of meta progression. Mm-hmm. And so how does that play into RAD?
Yeah, we have a few different areas where we touch on that. So one is that there's a town that's kind of that's where you start every time, and the town is persistent. And so there's a lot of areas inside the town that you can upgrade to help you in future runs. So it could be like, for example, the shop, which allows you to like buy inventory before you go on runs, or you can slowly unlock new melee weapons, which you can also use there. There's a bank that gives you various perks, including like we have an ATM network out in the wasteland that you can withdraw funds from, or various ways to like not lose all of your money when you die. So there's a lot of those sort of things that we have. And then just the game itself winds up opening up a bit, because as you play, depending on how well you do on your run, it starts to unlock other things. And so the most basic part of that, it would be like inventory items, which start to show up in shops, like a richer inventory, but also characters and other weapons will unlock that way as well.
So in RAD, it is clearly a wasteland, a post-apocalypse. I noticed that your character has some weird powers. Can you explain what's going on there and how it affects the gameplay?
Yeah, so like Lee mentioned, the mutations are random each run. So as you defeat mutants and absorb their RADs, your character will mutate. And there are a lot of different ways that can go. So sometimes your head might turn into a flaming skull that you can throw like a grenade. Sometimes your legs might turn into tree trunks that then allow you to shoot out vines that will capture enemies and hold them in place. We have one called Chronobellum, which will actually slow time to give you a little advantage in combat. And then those will actually evolve as you play as well. They can branch and become upgraded. So there's a lot of combinations, and so each run ends up feeling very different based on the mutations that you get.
And RAD is very unique looking. The style is very, I guess, I wasn't born there, but 1970s, 80s-ish. How'd you guys decide to pin or just focus on that style? Mm-hmm. And what did you do? Did you go through multiple iterations?
Yeah, I mean, the inspiration for the game really came out of, as a child of the 80s, it kind of came out of the nuclear angst of the 80s. And not just that, but sort of like the weird creativity that kind of came out of that angst. So, from old like pen and paper role-playing games, there's one called Gamma World that TSR made back in the day. Strange Hollywood movies like Cherry 2000 and Solar Babies. And what these things all had in common is they weren't really about, even though of course there was the Road Warrior, but these other forms of creativity was like almost like an alternate fantasy role-playing game genre, and they weren't really about like people fighting for the last resources. They were kind of like a more surreal landscape, and I think that is what made me want to dig in there. And I think the way that they treated dystopia was a bit different. It wasn't like super grim, dark, and desaturated. It was kind of colorful. It was like, well, the world's really screwed up. How are we going to fix it? I don't know. We're going on a road trip. We'll figure it out. And so I think we wanted that playfulness in there, and that kind of made sense to kind of bring it together with a little bit of that 80s aesthetic, which kind of softens some of the darkness of it, but lets you have fun while your character turns into something like way less than human,
Sure. And speaking of inspirations, I mean, it's a roguelike, and there are a lot of really good roguelikes out there. So what kind of games did you look at when developing RAD?
I mean, we looked at Dead Cells, we looked at Binding of Isaac, we looked at Enter the Gungeon. The team has played a wide variety of roguelikes. And we looked outside of the roguelike genre as well because, we want to make sure that we're bringing something new to the table because there are a number of them out there and we want to make sure we stand out.
Yeah, sure. And lastly, Double Fine definitely has a lot of style itself. And how does, working at Double Fine kind of help you create this game? You guys have put out a lot of really cool games like Psychonauts and Stacking. So, how did that help you guys with RAD?
Yeah, I think it's, I think when we come up with a new game, we always try to make sure that there's enough like creative space for us to do something unexpected in it. And I think because we were like, okay, well, let's do Mutations, right? Like, and this really allows the team to kind of get on board. And like some of the Mutations actually like this literally came from a pun. Like someone will be, this is a funny name, or like, I can picture what that does now, So it's kind of when you work with a procedural game, instead of having to like finally balance a very small set of powers, you can just have a wide variety, knowing that some of your runs are going to be high highs and some are going to be low lows, and that really unlocks creativity. And I was really happy that we finally got to work in that sort of genre, and I feel like we've hidden a lot of little secrets in there. We've made a lot of like in jokes, with how we sort of treat the overall narration and the meta story that's told over several runs. There's a lot of 80s references, but also contemporary stuff, and there's a lot of kind of a little bit dark humor in the game as well. And I think that's kind of where we brought the personality that we really look to add to any game.
Great. And when can we play RAD?
You get to play RAD on August 20th.